All right, so we're diving deep into the world of Dr. Joe Dispenza today.
Oh, yeah.
Buckle up.
This should be fun.
We're exploring his chat with Jay Shetty from the Jay Shetty podcast on YouTube. And let me tell you, Dispenza makes some bold claims, like really bold. He says we can actually brainwash ourselves for success.
Wow.
And abundance using this wild mix of neuroscience and quantum physics.
Interesting.
It's pretty out there, right?
Yeah, it does.
But hold on, he's got these super devoted followers who swear by his methods, and they claim to see tangible results.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What strikes me about Dispenza is how he really tries to explain the mechanisms behind how thoughts might shape reality. Like he links thought power to this quantum field and observer effect, suggesting our minds can influence matter at a subatomic level.
Whoa!
He even gives this example of a woman who used these principles to heal herself from an illness doctors said was incurable.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe there's more to this thought power thing than just, like, positive thinking. But how does it actually work? Dispenza throws out this stat that we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day.
Wow, that's a lot.
I know, right? And about 90% are repeats from the day before. So basically, we're kind of stuck in these mental loops.
Right.
But how do these repetitive thoughts actually impact our lives?
Well, Dispenza says those recurring thoughts create neural pathways in our brains. They essentially hardwire our responses to the world. The more we think a certain way, the stronger those connections become.
That makes sense.
It's based on Hebbian learning, this neuroscientific principle that says neurons that fire together wire together.
Oh, I've heard that before.
By age 35, these pathways solidify and create this sense of fixed identity. It's like our brains are on autopilot, replaying the same mental programs over and over.
So we're basically prisoners of our own mind.
Yeah.
But wait, doesn't neuroplasticity suggest that we can change those ingrained patterns?
Absolutely. That's where Dispenza's ideas get really interesting. Neuroplasticity shows our brains aren't fixed, they're constantly adapting. Even if we've been stuck in negative thought patterns for years, we can rewire our brains. The key, according to Dispenza, is understanding how past experiences, especially those with strong emotional responses, shape our present reality.
He calls these emotional responses anchors. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dispenza says when we have a strong emotional reaction to something, our brain takes a snapshot of that moment. It encodes it deep in our neural circuitry. And it's not just the event itself, but the emotions tied to it. They get anchored in our subconscious.
This makes me think about Dispenza's concept of the void. It sounds kind of ominous, but what does he actually mean by that?
Well, the void is what Dispenza calls the discomfort we feel when we try to step outside our familiar patterns and thought loops. It's that unease that comes up when we challenge our deeply ingrained beliefs and behaviors, like an existential fear of the unknown that our survival instincts try to protect us from. Have you ever noticed yourself procrastinating or getting distracted when you're about to do something that pushes you out of your comfort zone?
Oh, all the time.
That's the void trying to keep you in familiar territory.
So it's not really an empty space, but more like a psychological barrier we create to avoid discomfort.
Exactly.
But if we're constantly running from this void, how can we ever change?
Well, in Dispenza's view, lasting transformation requires us to venture into that void, to confront those uncomfortable feelings head on. He uses this provocative phrase to describe this process: becoming someone else.
Interesting.
He's not talking about superficial change, but a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves in the world.
This becoming someone else idea seems crucial to Dispenza's whole philosophy. But how do we actually do it? It can't be easy to just shed our old identity and become a new person overnight.
Right, it's definitely a process. Dispenza suggests conscious observation, becoming aware of our unconscious thoughts, actions, and feelings. He says, meditate to become familiar with yourself.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's about creating space between our thoughts and our awareness, learning to observe those thoughts without judgment, and ultimately gaining control over our mental and emotional states.
That sounds really challenging, but is meditation really enough to rewire our brains and create lasting change? I mean, life happens outside of those quiet moments of contemplation, right? How do we maintain that awareness throughout our busy days?
Well, Dispenza emphasizes that meditation is just the starting point. The real challenge is carrying that mindful awareness into our daily lives, especially during those moments when we're triggered or stressed.
I can imagine.
He suggests paying attention to those moments when we react unconsciously. You know, those times when we fall from grace and our old patterns take over.
Oh, I know those moments well.
Instead of judging ourselves, he encourages us to see these moments as opportunities to self-correct and redirect our thoughts and actions.
So it's about catching ourselves in the act and making a conscious choice to respond differently.
Exactly.
That seems like a pretty tall order. Are we really expected to be mindful every second of every day?
Well, Dispenza's not suggesting we aim for some unattainable state of perfect awareness. He acknowledges that we're all human and we're all going to stumble. It's about progress, not perfection. He encourages us to embrace the journey and see those falls from grace not as failures, but as valuable feedback. He even suggests those moments when we slip up can be seen as guidance from a higher power, what he calls breadcrumbs from the divine.
Breadcrumbs from the divine. Now that sounds a bit mystical. Is Dispenza suggesting the universe is sending us personalized messages through our mistakes?
Well, Dispenza's ideas definitely delve into the realm of spirituality. He believes that when we're on the right path, the universe conspires to support us. Those breadcrumbs could be unexpected synchronicities, intuitive nudges, or even those frustrating moments that force us to confront our limiting beliefs and make necessary changes.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued, but I have to admit, this is pushing me outside my comfort zone a bit. So we've talked about the power of thought, emotional anchors, and this idea of conscious observation. But how does quantum physics actually fit into all of this?
Hell, Dispenza goes beyond just connecting thoughts to neural pathways. He believes we can tap into the quantum field, a realm of pure potentiality to shape our reality. He uses this analogy of becoming a vortex or magnet for our desires.
A vortex or magnet. I'm picturing myself swirling around, attracting my dream life, but how do we actually become this human magnet?
Dispenza emphasizes the importance of emotionally embracing our desired future, like really feeling it as if it's already happened.
Okay, so not just thinking it, but feeling it.
Right. This might sound far-fetched, but there's emerging research in epigenetics, suggesting our thoughts and emotions can actually influence our genes.
Hold on. Are you saying our thoughts can actually change our biology?
It's a radical concept, I know. But while it's a relatively new area of research, there's growing evidence that our minds and bodies are way more interconnected than we previously thought.
Wow. So Dispenza is challenging us to not just think about our desired future, but to actually feel it.
Exactly. He believes that by emotionally embodying our desires, we're sending a powerful signal to the quantum field, aligning our energy with our goals, and drawing those desires into our reality.
That's definitely a lot to process. This idea of rewiring our brains to achieve success and abundance is fascinating. But I have a feeling it's going to take a lot more than just willpower and positive thinking. Can we really just think our way to a perfect life?
Well, Dispenza acknowledges that this process isn't always easy. In fact, he embraces the challenges and anxieties that inevitably arise when we push beyond our comfort zones.
Okay, so it's not all rainbows and butterflies. What does Dispenza suggest we do when those inevitable roadblocks pop up? How do we deal with the stress and frustration of trying to change deeply ingrained patterns?
Well, Dispenza offers this practical technique called mental rehearsal. It involves vividly imagining ourselves successfully navigating challenging situations. So instead of getting swept away by stress, we can use mental rehearsal to create a new neural pathway, a new response that's aligned with our desired outcome.
So like if I'm dreading a tough conversation, I can mentally rehearse, staying calm, collected, and communicating clearly, like giving my brain a sneak peek of the confident me I want to be. But wouldn't that just be living in a fantasy?
Well, Dispenza distinguishes between mindless daydreaming and focused mental rehearsal. The key difference is the emotional component. During mental rehearsal, you're not just visualizing a desired outcome, you're fully embodying the emotions that go with that reality. This emotional engagement is what signals your brain to start wiring those new neural pathways.
This reminds me of something else Dispenza talked about, self-regulation. He suggests when we feel that stress rising, we can create a pause just by saying out loud, "Excuse me 1 minute, I just need a minute." It's like hitting the pause button on an out-of-control movie.
Exactly. That pause is crucial. It allows you to step back from that reactive state and choose a more conscious response. Now, Dispenza is not advocating for suppressing emotions. He emphasizes acknowledging and feeling those emotions fully, but then making a conscious choice to shift your focus.
That seems like a subtle but powerful distinction. So we're not pretending those negative feelings aren't there, but recognizing them and choosing not to be ruled by them. But isn't there a danger of getting too focused on controlling our thoughts and emotions? Could this whole self-improvement journey become just another source of stress?
Dispenza addresses that concern. He's not advocating for a constant state of hypervigilance or self-criticism. He encourages a spirit of gentle self-correction, acknowledging that setbacks are inevitable. He sees those moments when we fall from grace, as he puts it, as valuable opportunities for learning and growth.
It's like those breadcrumbs from the divine we talked about earlier. Even our mistakes can guide us toward becoming better versions of ourselves. But speaking of those breadcrumbs, isn't that concept a bit hard to swallow for people who aren't particularly spiritual? How does Dispenza explain these synchronicities to skeptics?
Well, Dispenza acknowledges those experiences can be challenging to explain scientifically. However, he points to emerging research in fields like quantum biology and interconnectedness, suggesting that our understanding of reality is constantly evolving. Maybe those breadcrumbs are simply our heightened awareness, recognizing patterns and connections we previously missed.
So maybe it's not about the universe literally sending us messages, but rather our own minds becoming more tuned to the subtle cues and opportunities that were always there. But back to this idea of becoming someone else. It's such a central concept in Dispenza's work. Can you elaborate on how he describes this process of transformation?
Sure. Dispenza frames this becoming as a journey of shedding our old limiting beliefs and behaviors and stepping into a new identity aligned with our truest selves. He encourages us to consider, what thoughts and emotions would the person I want to become embodied? What actions would they take? He suggests we meditate on these qualities, allowing them to permeate our subconscious minds.
It's like consciously choosing the seeds we want to plant in the garden of our minds. But isn't there a danger of getting caught up in a fantasy world? Imagining a perfect version of ourselves that's impossible to achieve.
Well, Dispenza emphasizes the importance of grounding our vision in realistic action. He's not suggesting we simply wish for a better life, but rather consciously choose thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that support our goals. He encourages us to ask ourselves, what small step can I take today to move closer to the person I want to become?
That's a great reminder that real change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of consistent effort, of showing up each day and making choices that align with our vision. But what about those times when we feel overwhelmed, when those old negative patterns resurface?
Dispenza reminds us those moments aren't failures, but opportunities to practice self-regulation. He suggests a simple but powerful technique. When you feel stress rising, say out loud, "Excuse me 1 minute, I just need a minute." This creates a pause, allowing you to detach from the emotional reaction and choose a more conscious response.
It's like hitting the reset button on our internal system, giving ourselves a chance to break free from those automatic, unconscious reactions. But this whole process sounds incredibly demanding. Are we expected to constantly monitor our thoughts and emotions, meticulously planning every step, and never allowing ourselves to slip up? That doesn't sound very freeing or joyful.
Well, Dispenza emphasizes that this is not about striving for perfection or creating another source of pressure. He encourages a playful, experimental approach, seeing the journey of transformation as an adventure rather than a chore.
So it's more about embracing the process, knowing there will be ups and downs, and finding joy in the continual unfolding of our potential.
Exactly. Dispenza reminds us that even people who have achieved profound transformation, those who have experienced remarkable healing or success, often say they wouldn't change a thing about their journey. They recognize that the challenges, the setbacks, even those moments of falling from grace, were essential to their growth and evolution.
It's like those struggles, those moments of friction, are what polish the rough edges and reveal the brilliance within. But Dispenza doesn't shy away from the more mystical aspects of this process either, does he? He suggests that as we align with our truest selves and start taking action, the universe conspires to support us.
Yes, those breadcrumbs from the divine can appear in unexpected ways. A chance encounter, a timely opportunity, even a seeming obstacle that redirects us toward a more fulfilling path. Dispenza encourages us to be open to those synchronicities, trusting that we're being guided and supported even when we can't see the bigger picture.
That's a beautiful concept, but I imagine it's easier said than done, especially when we're in the midst of a challenge. How do we cultivate that trust in the universe when things feel uncertain or even chaotic?
Dispenza emphasizes the importance of connecting to our intuition, that inner knowing that often whispers guidance we might initially dismiss. He encourages us to pay attention to those subtle nudges, those gut feelings, even if they seem irrational or defy logic.
So it's about learning to listen to that inner voice, that deeper wisdom that resides within each of us, even when it contradicts the messages we've been conditioned to believe. But listening to that inner voice probably requires a level of self-awareness that many of us haven't cultivated yet. What does Dispenza suggest as a starting point for developing that inner awareness?
Dispenza returns to the practice of meditation as a cornerstone of this journey. He describes meditation not just as a stress reduction technique, but as a powerful tool for rewiring our brains and expanding our consciousness.
But doesn't he also acknowledge that meditation can be a struggle for many people? I've tried it before, and my mind just races with thoughts. It feels more frustrating than relaxing.
Oh, I know what you mean. Dispenza understands that challenge. He emphasizes that meditation is a practice, not a destination. He encourages us to approach it with a spirit of playful curiosity, observing our thoughts without judgment, and gently redirecting our attention back to the present moment.
So it's not about silencing our minds completely, but rather learning to become the observer of those thoughts, to create space between our thoughts and our awareness that seems more approachable, less daunting. But how does meditation actually help us rewire our brains and create the reality we desire?
Well, Dispenza points to research showing that regular meditation can physically alter our brain structure, strengthening areas associated with focus, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. He suggests that through consistent practice, we can weaken those neural pathways associated with stress, fear, and limitation, while strengthening those that support peace, joy, and expansive thinking.
It's like we're consciously choosing which circuits in our brain to energize, training our minds to operate from a higher frequency. But Dispenza takes this concept even further, connecting it to quantum physics, right? He suggests that we can literally tap into the quantum field to manifest our desires.
Yes, he uses vivid imagery to describe this process, suggesting we can become vortexes or magnets for our destiny. He emphasizes the importance of emotionally embracing our desired future as if it's already happening. This might sound far-fetched, but he connects it to research in epigenetics, which suggests that our thoughts and emotions can influence our genes.
So he's proposing that our internal state, our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, can actually impact our physical reality at a fundamental level. That's a pretty radical idea.
It is, and while it's still a relatively new area of exploration, there's growing evidence that the mind-body connection is far more profound than we previously understood.
This whole concept of rewiring our brains for success and abundance is incredibly compelling. But I have to admit, there's a part of me that's still skeptical. Is it really possible to just think our way to a perfect life?
Well, Dispenza acknowledges that this journey isn't about achieving some utopian ideal or avoiding challenges altogether. It's about cultivating a mindset of possibility, recognizing our innate power to create, and embracing the challenges and triumphs that come with consciously shaping our reality.
This has been a fascinating exploration so far. We've delved into the power of thought, emotional anchors, the concept of the void, mental rehearsal, and the importance of self-regulation. We've even touched on the mystical realm of breadcrumbs from the divine, and Dispenza's connection to quantum physics. But how do we actually start putting these ideas into practice? Where do we begin?
Well, Dispenza offers a wealth of practical techniques for managing stress, overcoming limiting beliefs, and cultivating a mindset of abundance. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore those techniques in more detail and consider how we can integrate them into our daily lives.
So we've covered a ton of ground in our deep dive into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. From the power of thought to quantum fields and even those mysterious breadcrumbs from the divine, it's been wild. But let's get practical. How can we actually use these ideas in our own lives? Where do we even begin?
Well, Dispenza offers a lot of different techniques, but I think a good place to start is his emphasis on gratitude. He suggests we start each day by consciously focusing on what we're grateful for, even small things.
Gratitude, right. That's a pretty popular idea these days. But does Dispenza explain why it's so important to this whole rewiring process?
He links gratitude to shifting our energy. When we focus on what we're missing, we're basically sending out a signal of lack to the universe. But when we cultivate gratitude, we align ourselves with abundance. It's like we're training our minds to see the good, appreciate the present moment, and be open to receiving more of what we want.
Okay, so gratitude is about more than just feeling good. It's about shifting our whole energetic state. But let's be real. Some days it's hard to feel truly grateful. We're dealing with challenges, deadlines, maybe even personal struggles. What does Dispenza say for those days when gratitude feels like a stretch?
He says start small. Instead of trying to force yourself to feel grateful for something huge, focus on simple things, like a warm cup of coffee, a sunny day, a moment of laughter. He says even those tiny moments of appreciation can start to shift your energy and open you to a more positive outlook.
It's like those small acts of gratitude create little cracks in those old patterns of negativity, letting the light shine through. But Dispenza doesn't stop at gratitude, right? He also talks a lot about visualization.
Yeah, he calls it mental rehearsal, and it's a big part of his approach. He suggests we spend time each day vividly imagining ourselves living our dream life, engaging all our senses in the process.
But isn't that just daydreaming? How does simply imagining something make it more likely to actually happen?
Dispenza connects mental rehearsal to neuroplasticity. When we imagine something vividly, our brains fire neural pathways as if it was really happening. He says by repeating these mental rehearsals, we're basically building the neurological foundation for our desired reality.
So it's like we're pre-programming our brains for success, creating a mental blueprint of the life we want. But how do we make sure those mental shifts turn into real-world action? What's to stop us from just getting lost in fantasy and ignoring the actual steps we need to take to reach our goals?
Dispenza emphasizes mental rehearsal is not passive. It's about emotionally embodying the future we desire, and he believes that's what drives our actions in the present. He also stresses aligning our actions with our vision. He says, ask yourself, what choices would the person I want to become make? What actions would they take?
So it's about connecting visualization with action, making choices that match the version of ourselves we're imagining. But what about those times when we inevitably mess up? We've all been there. We set a goal, start off strong, then lose steam. Does Dispenza have any advice for navigating those moments of self-sabotage?
Dispenza sees those setbacks as opportunities to course correct, not as failures. He encourages us to be kind to ourselves in these moments, remembering that we're all a work in progress. Instead of beating ourselves up, he suggests asking, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust what I'm doing?
It's like he's saying we should be our own inner cheerleaders, giving ourselves the same kind of encouragement and support we'd give to a friend. But this whole rewiring process sounds like so much work. Is Dispenza saying we need to be constantly on guard, watching our thoughts and actions every second of the day? That doesn't sound very sustainable or fun.
Dispenza is not about striving for some impossible standard of perfection. It's about building awareness and making conscious choices. He reminds us change takes time, and it's okay to have good days and bad days. He encourages us to celebrate progress, big or small, and approach this whole thing with a sense of playfulness and curiosity.
So it's not about forcing our way to a better life, but more like going on an adventure, a process of self-discovery and growth. It's interesting that he talks about falling in love with the process. What does he mean by that?
I think Dispenza believes that when we're too focused on the end goal, we miss the beauty and the lessons we learn along the way. He's encouraging us to enjoy the journey of becoming, appreciate both the challenges and the victories, and remember that each step brings us closer to our true selves.
It's like he's saying the destination isn't the real point. The journey is what changes us. And speaking of journeys, this deep dive into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work has been pretty amazing for me. What's the biggest thing that stood out to you from his conversation with Jay Shetty?
For me, it's the reminder that we're not just stuck with whatever life throws our way. We have a lot more power to shape our own reality than we think. But with that power comes responsibility. If our thoughts and beliefs really do create our world, then we have to be careful about what we're putting into our minds.
That's a powerful message. We're not just along for the ride. We have the ability, and I even say the responsibility, to create a life that reflects our deepest values and dreams. So if our listeners are ready to start their own journey of transformation, what would you suggest as a first step?
Start with looking inward. Ask yourself, what parts of my life don't feel right? What thoughts and beliefs are holding me back? What does my ideal life look and feel like? Then, start taking small steps every day to close the gap between where you are now and the vision you have for yourself.
That's great advice. Start small, be consistent, and trust the process. And as Dispenza says, the journey is the reward.
And if these ideas have resonated with you, I definitely recommend checking out more of Dispenza's work. His books, lectures, and meditations are full of insights and practical tools for rewiring your brain for success, abundance, and a deeper connection to yourself and the universe.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the mind-bending world of Dr. Joe Dispenza. We've explored his fascinating theories, his practical techniques, and his message of empowerment. Now it's your turn. Take what you've learned, apply it to your life, and start creating the reality you want.
Remember, the power to change your life is within you.